The galaxy was falling apart. For centuries, peace had held together the great star systems, fragile and delicate like glass. The Galactic Council had promised unity, protection, and safety for all species. But peace is never eternal. Shadows grew at the edge of known space. Those shadows had a name, the Dominion of Vaith. The Dominion came like a storm. They were not explorers. They were not builders. They were conquerors. World after world fell under their iron grip. Their fleets burned through colonies. Their soldiers enslaved entire populations. The screams of millions carried on broken transmissions, traveling through the void of space like dying echoes. Every race fought back, but every race failed. The Vaith were merciless. They destroyed defenses as if they were nothing. They hunted refugees with cold precision. The weak were made to kneel and the strong were broken until nothing remained. The Council, once proud, now trembled. Their fleets were shattered. Their armies scattered. Their members, once voices of calm diplomacy, were now voices of fear and despair. They begged for help from allies, from anyone who still had the strength to fight. But there was no one left, no one, except the one world they had sworn never to call, Earth. The very name was spoken with unease in council chambers. Humanity was not like the other species of the stars. They came from a death world, a planet so violent, so hostile that survival itself was a daily war. Storms tore through continents. Predators hunted endlessly. Plagues rose and fell. Even the ground itself shook and burned with fury. And yet somehow humans had thrived. The galaxy had always feared them. Humans were considered unstable, too aggressive, too unpredictable. They adapted too quickly. They fought too hard. They never surrendered, not even when survival seemed impossible. To many alien species, humanity was dangerous, a force better left in isolation. But now, with the Dominion crushing everything in its path, the galaxy had no choice. In the great chamber of the Galactic Council, where once voices had been calm and logical, silence now hung like a shroud. The council members sat in their floating chairs, eyes lowered, their hearts heavy. Finally, the Kalari elder, whose own people had lost 3 worlds in a single week, spoke. His voice was broken, trembling with both fear and shame. "We have no strength left," he whispered. "The Dominion will not stop until all life bends to their will. We have pleaded with every ally. None remain, only one. Only one still has the power to fight." The chamber grew colder. Everyone knew which world he spoke of. Another counselor, her crystalline body glowing faintly, shook her head. "No, you cannot mean them. You cannot mean Earth. They are too much. They are not peacekeepers. They are destroyers. To call them would be to unleash fire." But the Kalari elder lifted his head, tears shining in his many eyes. "Then let us burn, if burning is the price of survival. Better fire than chains. Better monsters than extinction." No one argued after that. And so, with hands that trembled, the council sent the message. It was short, desperate, and heavy with shame. Across the endless dark, it carried toward the small blue planet at the edge of the spiral arm. "Humans of Earth," the message said, "we ask for mercy. We ask for salvation." On Earth, the message arrived in silence. It was intercepted by Terran Command, and within hours, it was placed before the highest council of humankind. Generals, admirals, and leaders from every nation gathered in one room. The air was thick with the weight of the words. For a long time, no one spoke. Humanity had not been blind to the Dominion. They had seen the destruction, the burning colonies, the broken fleets, but no one had asked them for help until now. The galaxy had always feared them, avoided them, shunned them. And now, when death stood at every star's doorstep, they came crawling. Some of the leaders were bitter. "Why should we fight for them?" one asked. "They never wanted us among them. They called us monsters. Now they ask the monsters to save them," but others knew the truth. Humanity did not fight for approval. They did not fight for gratitude. They fought because they could not ignore the cries of the broken. They fought because they remembered their own history. Wars, genocides, the horrors they had survived and sworn never to repeat. At last, Admiral Rena Vale rose. She was a woman carved by battle, her face lined with scars, her eyes sharp as steel, her voice cut through the silence like a blade. "They ask for mercy. They ask for salvation. But they know nothing of mercy. Mercy is not what saves you from monsters. Mercy is what comes after the monsters are already gone." Her words struck the room like thunder. The leaders looked at one another, and in that moment a decision was made. Earth would answer, not with gentle hands, not with soft words, but with fire, with iron, and with the fury of a world that had learned to survive everything its own nature had thrown at it. The galaxy had pleaded for mercy. Earth was about to respond, and the stars themselves would never forget what came next. The Dominion believed themselves unstoppable. For years, their fleets had torn through systems without resistance. No one had stood against them. No one had dared, until now. When word reached the Dominion that a new fleet had appeared, they laughed. To them, the Galactic Council was a dying animal. What new power could it summon? They expected another fragile defense, another pitiful attempt at survival. They prepared to crush it as they had crushed so many before. Their target was the Kalari homeworld, a jewel of oceans and silver forests. Dominion warships gathered in orbit, ready to strike the final blow. The Kalari people wept in fear, believing this was the end. But when the Dominion descended, they found Earth waiting. Terran warships slid from hyperspace like blades drawn from a sheath. Dozens of vessels, vast and scarred, spread across the black void. At their head was the flagship, Resolute Dawn, its hull covered in battle marks from wars the Dominion had never even heard of. The Dominion commander laughed when he saw them. Old ships, crude designs, they dare to challenge us with relics? He ordered his fleet to advance. Admiral Rena Vale stood on the bridge of her ship, calm as the storm approached. Her officers moved with precision, hands steady, voices firm. No fear showed in their eyes. Humanity had fought too many wars to be shaken by another enemy. Open fire, Vale commanded, and the void lit with fury. Terran cannons thundered, spitting plasma and rail shot across the battlefield. Dominion ships, built to intimidate weaker foes, suddenly shuddered under the brutal assault. Their shields cracked. Their hulls tore open. In minutes, entire lines of warships were burning. The Kalari, watching from the surface, could hardly breathe. They had seen the Dominion tear through fleets without effort. But now it was the Dominion that faltered. It was the Dominion that fell back in confusion, their perfect formations breaking apart. Humanity pressed forward without hesitation. Their ships moved like hunters, striking weak points with terrifying accuracy. They did not fight with elegance. They fought with raw, overwhelming force. Every shot carried the weight of centuries of survival. And then came the Marines. Dropships roared through the atmosphere, piercing fire and smoke. They fell like meteors, their hulls glowing red as they tore into the skies of the Kalari world. Dominion ground forces had already landed, preparing to enslave the population. They were ready for frightened civilians, for weak resistance. They were not ready for humans. Terran Marines hit the ground with a thunder that shook the soil. Armored, armed and merciless, they surged into battle like a tidal wave. They carried rifles that spat death, blades forged for close combat, and eyes that burned with fury. The Dominion soldiers fought, but they had never faced enemies like this. Humans did not retreat. They did not break. They advanced through fire, through blood, through screams. They fought hand to hand when their guns ran dry, their fists and knives striking with savage precision. The Kalari civilians hid in the ruins, trembling as the battle raged. But as they watched, their fear slowly changed. The humans were terrifying, monsters just as the legends had said. But those monsters were not killing them. They were killing their oppressors, and in that moment the Kalari understood. Hours passed. The Dominion fleet shattered and fled. Their soldiers lay broken on the ground, their banners burning. When silence finally returned, the Kalari cities still stood. Their people, though shaken, were free. And above them, Terran ships held orbit, a shield against the next attack. Admiral Vale addressed the council through transmission. Her uniform was stained with smoke, her eyes hard but steady. "The Dominion bleeds," she said. "They thought themselves untouchable. They were wrong. This is only the beginning." The message spread across the stars. To the enslaved, it was a spark of hope. To the Dominion, it was a warning. And to the council, it was proof that the monsters they had feared were now their only salvation. But victory came with a price. Human soldiers lay among the dead. Hundreds had fallen in the first battle alone. Yet their comrades did not grieve with despair. They burned their dead with fire, saluting them with silence and steel. To humanity, sacrifice was not the end. It was the cost of freedom. Alien eyes watched in awe and confusion. They did not understand how humans could suffer such loss and still fight on with greater fury. They did not understand the fire that kept them moving. "They are monsters," one counselor whispered, watching the reports. "No one else fights like that." "Yes," the Kalari elder replied softly, tears in his eyes. "But they are our monsters." Across the galaxy, whispers spread. The Dominion had been defeated, not by fleets of the Council, not by the combined armies of dozens of species, but by the humans of Earth. Some whispered in fear. Some whispered in awe, and for the first time in generations, the galaxy felt something it had nearly forgotten. Hope. The first strike had been made. Humanity had revealed its teeth, and the Dominion, for the first time, had learned what it meant to be prey. War was never clean. The Kalari homeworld had been saved, but the ground still smelled of smoke and blood. Dominion corpses littered the streets, their banners torn, their machines twisted wrecks of metal. Among them lay Terran soldiers, men and women who had given everything in a battle far from their own home. The Kalari people emerged from hiding, their eyes wide, their bodies trembling. They had expected to be enslaved. They had expected death. Instead, they saw human soldiers carrying their wounded, even carrying Kalari civilians on their backs through the ruins. It was strange. The humans looked like monsters in their dark armor. They fought like demons, their fury unmatched. Yet when the fighting ended, they were gentle with the weak. They gave food to children, wrapped wounds with their own bandages, and stood guard while civilians slept. For the Kalari, it was the first time they realized monsters could also be protectors, but humanity never forgot its cost. On the fields outside the city, the Marines gathered around their dead. There were no grand ceremonies, no speeches. They built pyres of broken wood and scrap metal, laying their fallen brothers and sisters upon them. Then in silence, they set them alight. The flames rose into the night sky, smoke carrying into the stars. The soldiers stood in perfect lines, helmets under their arms, faces hard with grief but unbroken. Some shed silent tears. Others clenched their fists so tightly their knuckles bled. Admiral Rena Vale stood at the front, her voice low, carried only to her soldiers. "We burn them not in sorrow but in honor. They gave their lives, so that others may live free. We will carry their fire into every battle until the Dominion falls." The Kalari watched from a distance. To them, fire was a thing of destruction. But here, in the hands of humans, it was something else. It was memory. It was defiance. The Council received the battle reports with disbelief. "Thousands of humans dead," one counselor said, scanning the data. "And yet they do not withdraw?" "Any other species would retreat, rebuild, hesitate. These humans, they only grow stronger." "They are not like us," another whispered, her voice filled with unease. "They fight as if death is an old friend." The Kalari elder, weary but alive, looked around the chamber. "You call them monsters. Perhaps they are. But remember this, the monsters bled for us. The monsters died for us. What have we done for them?" The chamber fell into silence. Back at the Kalari capital, Admiral Vale met with her officers in the command tent. Maps and holograms glowed before them, showing Dominion strongholds across dozens of systems. "They will not forget this defeat," one officer warned. "The Dominion will come harder with more ships, more firepower." "Good," Vale answered coldly. "Let them come. We will not wait for them to strike again. We will carry this war to their very heart." The officers saluted, but there was no joy in their faces. They all knew what this meant. More battles, more death, more sacrifices. Humanity had chosen this path, and they would not turn back. That night, Vale walked alone through the Kalari city. The ruins still smoldered, but life was beginning to return. Families searched for one another. Children laughed faintly for the first time in weeks, and food stalls opened to feed the hungry. An old Kalari woman approached her, her body frail, her eyes filled with tears. She bowed deeply, her hands trembling. "Admiral, you saved us. You saved my people. We can never repay you." Vale looked at her, the weight of loss heavy in her chest. She thought of the soldiers who would never see Earth again, of the families waiting back home for news that would never come. "You owe us nothing," Vale said softly, "but remember their names. Remember the humans who will never go home. That is all we ask." The old woman placed her hands together and whispered, "We will remember, always." In the days that followed, word of the battle spread across the galaxy. For the enslaved, it was a spark of rebellion. Secret cells rose in the shadows, daring to resist the Dominion for the first time in years. For the Council, it was a bitter reminder. The humans were the only reason they still lived. And for the Dominion, it was fury. Their leaders howled at the loss. Their pride wounded more deeply than their fleets. They swore vengeance, promising to grind humanity into dust. But beneath their rage was something they had never felt before. Fear. They had faced hundreds of species, crushed armies, burned worlds. But never had they seen soldiers who fought like this. Never had they faced an enemy who treated death as fuel instead of weakness. The Dominion had awakened something they could not control. On the resolute dawn, Admiral Vale looked at the stars. She knew the battles ahead would be worse, harder, bloodier. Humanity had already paid in blood, and they would pay again. But her voice carried the same iron resolve it always did. We will not stop. Not until every chain is broken. Not until the Dominion learns what mercy truly means. Her officers stood taller, her soldiers sharpened their blades, and across the galaxy, whispers grew louder. The humans were monsters, but they were monsters who fought for freedom. And in a galaxy drowning in darkness, even monsters could become the light. The Dominion was humiliated. They had lost at the Kalari homeworld. Their fleets had been shattered, their soldiers crushed by warriors they had mocked as primitive. The name of Earth spread across the galaxy like wildfire, carried in whispers of awe and terror. The Dominion could not allow it. They ruled through fear, and now that fear had been broken. To regain it, they chose another weapon, terror. They began burning colonies not for strategy but for spectacle. Entire planets were bombarded from orbit, their cities reduced to glass. They executed prisoners and broadcast the images across the stars. They slaughtered innocents, shouting into the void, "This is what awaits those who resist the Dominion." The Council trembled. Civilizations wept, and many looked to humanity with desperate eyes, wondering if even the monsters of Earth could stand against such cruelty. Humanity did not tremble. Humanity burned. Every execution, every shattered colony, every scream only lit the fire in Terran hearts. The Dominion had hoped to break them. Instead, they awakened something far more dangerous. On the flagship Resolute Dawn, Admiral Rena Vale stood before her soldiers. Her voice was low, her eyes blazing with fury. "They think terror will stop us," she said. "They think we will kneel because they murder the weak. But humanity does not kneel. Not for tyrants. Not for monsters. We are the fire they cannot extinguish. We are the storm they cannot survive, and we will carry this war to their very heart." Her words spread through the fleet, carried into every ear, every soul. Soldiers clenched their fists. Pilots sharpened their resolve, and Marines prepared their blades. The humans were ready. Their next target, Yather Prime. Yather Prime was no ordinary world. It was one of the Dominion's strongest fortresses, a citadel built to terrify enemies. Its defenses were legendary. Massive fleets, orbital cannons, and fortresses carved into the very mountains. For decades, no one had dared approach it. The humans did. When the Terran fleet emerged from hyperspace, the stars themselves seemed to shake. Dominion commanders laughed bitterly. "They come to die," one sneered. But his smile did not last long. The battle began. Terran ships moved with brutal precision. Railguns and plasma cannons tore through Dominion formations. Fighters swarmed like angry hornets, breaking apart enemy wings. Dominion vessels built to intimidate crumbled under the sheer savagery of human firepower. But the humans did not stop at space. Dropships tore into the atmosphere, glowing like meteors. They struck the ground with thunder, their doors blasting open as Terran Marines charged into the fire. The Dominion fortress roared to life. Artillery rained from the mountains. Armored beasts charged across the battlefield. But the humans met them head-on. The clash was brutal. Marines fought through fire and smoke, advancing step by step. Their rifles spat death. Their blades cut through enemies in close quarters. Even when their armor cracked and their bodies bled, they pressed forward. The Dominion had never seen such madness. No soldier of any other species would fight like this. When faced with overwhelming fire, others retreated. Humans advanced. When surrounded, others surrendered. Humans fought harder. The Kalari and other alien allies watched from behind the lines. They had come to support, but in truth they stood in awe. To fight beside humans was to see nightmares unleashed upon the enemy. It was terrifying and it was glorious. Hours turned into a day. The battlefield was a wasteland of smoke and blood. The Dominion fortress still stood, but cracks spread across its defenses. At last, Admiral Vale gave the order. Break them. Human artillery pounded the fortress. Explosives tore through its gates. Marines stormed inside, fighting room by room, corridor by corridor. The enemy resisted with desperation, but nothing could stop the humans now. In the throne room of the fortress, the Dominion commander stood tall, his armor gleaming, his voice echoing with arrogance. You are nothing but beasts. You think you can defeat the Dominion? You will break just as all the others broke before you. A human Marine, bloodied and scarred, stepped forward. His voice was calm, almost quiet. We are not like the others. Then he struck. The commander fell, and with him Yathor Prime fell. When the smoke cleared, the fortress lay in ruins. Dominion banners burned in the wind. Terran Marines raised their flag above the shattered citadel. The galaxy watched in stunned silence. The Dominion's most feared fortress gone. Its army scattered, its pride shattered. The council chambers erupted with disbelief. Some cried out in joy, others in fear. For if humans could do this to the Dominion, what else could they do? But to the enslaved worlds, the news was salvation. Rebellions erupted across star systems. Chains were broken. And everywhere a new whisper spread. The monsters are coming, and they fight for us. That night on the battlefield of Yathor Prime, Admiral Vale stood among her soldiers. The air smelled of ash and victory. She looked at her Marines, scarred, tired, but still standing. You have done what no one believed possible, she said. You broke their fortress. You broke their spirit. Remember this, terror belongs to them, not to us. We do not fear the Dominion. They fear us. A roar erupted from the soldiers, echoing across the broken world. The turning point had come. The Dominion had tried to break humanity with terror. Instead, humanity had shown the galaxy what true monsters looked like. The fall of Yathor Prime sent shockwaves through the galaxy. For the first time in living memory, the Dominion bled. Their fortress had fallen, their fleet scattered, and their commanders slain. Entire worlds that had once bowed in fear now whispered rebellion. Across star systems, slaves broke their chains. The Dominion's shadow was lifting, but the war was not yet over. The Dominion still had its throne world, Valkyries. A world ringed with defenses, guarded by fleets so vast they blotted out the stars. It was the heart of the Empire, a place no sane army would dare attack. Humanity dared. The Terran fleet gathered. Hundreds of ships, scarred from battle, floated like predators in the dark. Beside them sailed the vessels of free worlds, Kalari, Dathar, Hinari, and others who had once been too afraid to fight. They had seen what humans could do, and now they came to stand at their side. Admiral Rena Vale looked upon the stars with steel in her eyes. Her fleet was battered, her soldiers weary, but their spirits blazed brighter than ever. This is it, she told them, the last battle. If we win here, the galaxy is free. If we fall, then let history remember that we fell standing, with fire in our hands. The response was a roar. The fleet moved. The battle for Valkyries began with thunder. Dominion fleets poured from the planet like a tide of darkness. Their ships were massive, bristling with weapons. Their numbers dwarfed the human fleet. The Council Watchers believed it would be a massacre, but humanity did not flinch. The resolute Dawn led the charge, railguns lighting the void. Terran ships wove through enemy formations, striking like wolves at the throat. The Allies followed, their courage magnified by human fury. Space became fire. The Dominion fought with desperation, but something was different now. Their enemies did not cower. The Terrans had broken their aura of fear, and without fear, the Dominion was only flesh and steel could bleed. One by one, their mighty ships fell. On the ground, it was worse. Terran Marines stormed Valkyries itself. The Dominion had prepared for them with traps, fortresses, and legions of soldiers. But humanity had long since grown used to fighting against impossible odds. The landing was chaos. Plasma rained from the skies. Dominion war beasts tore into human lines. Soldiers screamed and fell. But still they advanced. Every step forward was paid in blood. Every corridor cleared came with sacrifice. Yet the Marines kept fighting, their resolve unbroken. Because they knew this was not just another battle. This was the end. At the heart of Velkari stood the throne of chains, a massive citadel of black stone and fire. Inside, the High Dominator sat upon his throne, surrounded by his guards. When the Terrans burst into the chamber, he rose, his voice echoing like thunder. "You dare defy me?
You are vermin, nothing more."
You think you can destroy the Dominion? You will burn." Admiral Vale stepped forward, her rifle still smoking from battle. Her armor was scarred, her face streaked with dirt and blood, but her eyes never wavered. "No," she said. "You will." The final clash began. The High Dominator was a giant, clad in armor of dark metal, wielding a blade that burned with energy. He struck with the strength of 10 men, cutting down soldiers around him. But the humans did not fall back, they swarmed him. Bullets sparked against his shield. Blades clashed. The chamber echoed with the screams of the wounded and the roar of defiance. At last, Admiral Vale herself faced him. He towered over her, laughing as he swung his blade down. She caught the strike on her rifle, sparks flying, the weight of it nearly crushing her. But she did not break. With a shout, she drove her knife into the gap of his armor. He staggered. The Marines seized the moment, unleashing fire from all sides. The High Dominator roared in fury and pain, then fell, crashing to the floor of his throne room. The Dominion was finished. Silence spread across the battlefield. When the news reached the fleets, cheers shook the stars. Dominion ships surrendered. Chains fell from the necks of slaves across 100 worlds. The Council, once too afraid to hope, wept openly. The war was over. But even in victory, fear lingered. The Council gathered in their chamber. The question weighed heavily in every mind. What now of humanity? They had saved the galaxy, yes. They had broken the Dominion's chains, but they had done it with fury and fire, with savagery that no other species could match. "They are monsters," one counselor whispered. "Yes," another replied softly, "but they are our monsters." On Velkaris, Admiral Vale stood upon the ruins of the Throne of Chains. Her soldiers gathered around her, scarred, weary, but alive. The stars above were free for the first time in centuries. She looked at her people, then at the galaxy, watching through countless broadcasts. "Remember this day," she said. "Remember who we are. We are not conquerors. We are not tyrants. We are humanity. We fight not to rule, but to free. And if monsters were needed to break your chains, then let the galaxy remember that Earth's monsters fought for mercy." Her words carried across the stars, and for the first time, the galaxy did not tremble at humanity's fury. They stood taller because of it. In the years to come, songs would be sung of the Terran soldiers who burned brighter than suns. Statues would be raised of the Marines who never stopped advancing. And stories would spread of the monsters from Earth, monsters who saved the stars. For in the darkest hour, when the galaxy pleaded for mercy, it was humanity who answered. The galaxy held its breath. When the message went out to Earth, many wondered if the humans would even respond. Some believed humanity would ignore them. Others feared they would come, but not as allies, rather as conquerors who would finish what the Dominion had started. Weeks passed in silence. Then the silence broke. A ripple of space opened near the capital world of the Galactic Council, and ships emerged from the darkness. They were nothing like the fleets the Council was used to. Alien vessels were smooth, curved, designed with elegance and beauty in mind. They were built to travel, to defend, to inspire hope. The Terran ships were different. They were colossal and brutal in design, all steel and armor. Their surfaces bore the scars of countless battles, blackened from fire, dented from impacts, patched with heavy plating. They were not painted in bright colors or symbols of peace. They carried only one flag, the blue and green of Earth, a world that had survived by fighting every day of its existence. The fleet moved in perfect silence, like predators gliding through the void. Every alien watching from orbit felt the same chill. The humans had come. In the council chamber, thousands gathered to see them. Representatives of dozens of species floated or stood in silence, their eyes fixed on the massive doors. Guards shifted nervously, their hands tightening on ceremonial weapons that would be useless against what was coming. Then the doors opened. Admiral Rena Vale entered first. She walked with the weight of command, her uniform black with silver trim, her chest marked with medals from battles across Earth's own turbulent history. A scar cut across her cheek, a reminder of the wars her people had already fought. Her gaze swept across the chamber, calm, sharp, unyielding. Behind her marched soldiers, Terran Marines, clad in dark armor. Their boots striking the ground in rhythm, they looked like statues carved for war. Their helmets carried no faces, only mirrored visors that reflected the fearful eyes of the aliens staring at them. A hush fell across the chamber. One of the counselors, a slender being of crystal, finally broke the silence. His voice trembled as he spoke. "Humans of Earth, you answered our call." Admiral Vale stopped at the center of the chamber. She did not bow, did not lower her head. She simply stood, as if her very presence was enough to command the room. "You asked for mercy," she said, her voice carrying like thunder through the hall. "But mercy does not stop war. Mercy does not break chains. You asked for salvation, that we can offer." The word struck the chamber like a storm. The aliens shifted in unease. This was not the soft reassurance they had hoped for. This was not gentle kindness. This was something else entirely, something dangerous. A counselor from the aquatic world of Valar spoke next. Her voice rippled with unease. We asked for protection. We thought you might guard our colonies, shield us while we rebuilt. But you speak of something greater and darker." Admiral Vale's eyes narrowed. "You did not summon shepherds. You summoned wolves." "Do not pretend otherwise," gasps spread across the chamber. Some flinched at her words. Others whispered fearfully. The Kalari elder, the one who had first begged for Earth's help, lowered his head but said nothing. He knew she was right. Outside, the humans wasted no time. Terran Marines established command posts. Engineers brought machines that dug into the soil, building fortresses in days where other species would have taken months. Their ships did not sit idle. They scouted enemy positions, analyzed hyperspace routes, and began planning counterstrikes. Alien soldiers watched in silence, shocked by the efficiency. Humans did not wait for orders from the Council. They acted, always moving, always preparing. They were not allies who asked for permission. They were a storm that had decided to protect, but on their own terms. Among the younger alien races, fear mixed with awe. To see humans in action was to see something terrifying but mesmerizing. They did not move like prey. They did not speak like the defeated. They carried themselves as predators, and yet they had chosen to fight for the weak. Whispers spread across the capital world. The monsters have come, but some spoke the words with hope. That night, Admiral Vale stood on the balcony of the council chamber, overlooking the alien city below. Lights glittered across towers and bridges, yet she could feel the weight of fear pressing from every corner. She knew what they thought of her people. Monsters, deathworlders, beasts that should have stayed in their cage. A Kalari aide approached carefully, his slender body shaking. "Admiral," he whispered, "they call you monsters. They always have. Do you hate them for it?" Vale did not turn to him at first. She looked out into the stars, her eyes reflecting the endless dark. When she finally spoke, her voice was low, heavy with memory. "Monsters are what you call those who do what others cannot. Monsters are what you call survivors. If the galaxy needs monsters to fight its war, then that is what we will be. But know this, we are monsters only to those who bring death and chains. To those who seek freedom, we are their shield." The Kalari's eyes filled with tears. For the first time in years, he felt a spark of hope. When dawn rose over the capital world, humanity was already preparing for war. Their fleet spread like wings across the system. Their soldiers drilled in silence, their weapons gleaming under alien suns. The Council watched with unease, but also with something else they had not felt in years. Safety. The galaxy had called for mercy. The monsters of Earth had arrived. And soon the Dominion would learn what it meant to face Deathworlders in battle.